Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered about the stars? Imagine using those same stars not just for wondering, but for finding your way to freedom. That's a part of the incredible story of a woman named Harriet Tubman. She was born around 1822 in Maryland with the name Araminta Ross, though everyone called her Minty. From a very young age, she was enslaved. This meant she was not free to choose her own life. She was owned by another person and forced to work without pay, facing terrible hardship every single day. Her life was not her own, and the world must have seemed like a very dark place. Life for Minty was incredibly difficult. As a small child, she was sent to work for other families, doing hard jobs like checking muskrat traps in cold rivers or taking care of crying babies. She was often hungry, cold, and punished harshly for the smallest mistakes. One day, a terrible thing happened that would change her life forever. An angry overseer threw a heavy metal weight at another enslaved person, but it hit Harriet instead. The injury was so severe that for the rest of her life she would suddenly fall into a deep sleep, a condition we now call narcolepsy. But even this great challenge could not stop the powerful spirit growing inside her. Despite the pain and suffering, Harriet held on to a powerful faith. She prayed and dreamed of a life where she could be free, a life where she could make her own choices. These dreams were like tiny seeds of hope planted in her heart. She heard stories whispered among other enslaved people, stories of a secret path to the north, a place called Canada, where slavery was not allowed. These whispers were about something called the Underground Railroad. It wasn't a real railroad with tracks and trains, but a secret network of people who believed that everyone deserved to be free and were willing to help others find their way there. This dream of freedom became Harriet's guiding star. She knew the journey would be dangerous, that she could be caught and punished, or even worse. But the idea of living her whole life in chains was a far greater fear. The hope of freedom was a powerful fire that burned brighter than any fear she felt. She decided that one day she would follow that path to the north. She would not only find her own freedom, but, as we will see, she would become a guiding light for hundreds of others, leading them out of the darkness of slavery and into the light of a new life. So, what was this mysterious Underground Railroad? As I mentioned, it wasn't a real train that ran underground. It was a clever name for a secret network of people, safe houses, and hidden paths that helped enslaved people escape to freedom. Think of it like a secret team, working together for a very important mission. The people involved were called conductors, the safe houses were stations, and the escaping people were called passengers. This secret language helped keep everyone safe, because helping someone escape slavery was against the law and incredibly dangerous for everyone involved. It was a system built on trust and bravery. The stations on this railroad were often the homes, barns, or even hidden rooms of brave people who believed slavery was wrong. These people, both black and white, were called abolitionists. They would hide the escaping passengers during the day, giving them food, a place to rest, and directions to the next safe place. The journey was almost always made at night, under the cover of darkness. The passengers would travel for miles and miles on foot, following rivers, looking for secret signs, and always listening for the sounds of slave catchers who were hunting for them with dogs. It was a terrifying and exhausting journey. The Underground Railroad was incredibly important because it was a lifeline. For people living in the brutal system of slavery, it represented hope. It was a sign that they were not forgotten and that there were good people in the world who were willing to risk everything to help them. Every person who successfully made the journey north was a victory against the injustice of slavery. It showed that the human spirit's desire for freedom could not be crushed. The railroad was a powerful act of resistance, a quiet but mighty rebellion against a cruel and unfair system that treated people like property. Why did people risk so much to be a part of it? Because they understood a simple, powerful truth, that every person has the right to be free. The conductors and station masters knew they could be sent to jail or have their homes burned down. The passengers knew they could be caught and returned to an even worse life than the one they left behind. But the promise of freedom, the chance to own your own body, to keep your family together, and to decide your own future, was a prize worth any risk. The Underground Railroad was a beautiful example of people coming together to do what is right, no matter how hard it is. In 1849, Harriet Tubman decided it was her time to be free. She heard that she was about to be sold to a new owner in the deep south, a place from which escape was nearly impossible. She knew she had to act now. Leaving her family behind was one of the hardest things she ever had to do, but she put her faith in God and her feet on the path north. Using the secret network of the Underground Railroad, she traveled nearly 90 miles, moving by night, guided by the North Star. Can you imagine how frightening that must have been? Every shadow, every rustle in the leaves could have been danger, but her courage was stronger than her fear. When Harriet finally crossed the state line into the free state of Pennsylvania, she said, "I looked at my hands to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees, and I felt like I was in heaven." But her happiness was not complete. She was free, but her family, her parents, her brothers, and her sisters were not. Harriet made a promise to herself right then and there. She would not be content with her own freedom. She would go back. She would risk her own new life to bring her loved ones out of slavery and into the light with her. This is what makes Harriet Tubman a true hero. It's one thing to save yourself, but it's another thing entirely to turn around and go back into the danger you just escaped to save others. Over the next 10 years, Harriet made about 13 dangerous trips back into the slave-holding South. She became one of the most famous and successful conductors on the Underground Railroad. The people she rescued knew her as Moses, after the biblical prophet who led his people out of slavery. She was their deliverer, their guide in the darkness, a symbol of hope who walked with them on the long road to freedom. On these journeys, Harriet was incredibly clever and brave. She would often disguise herself, sometimes as an old woman, to avoid being recognized. She carried a songbook to look like she was a religious woman, and she knew the secret calls of birds to send signals to her passengers. She also carried a pistol, not to harm anyone, but to make it clear that there was no turning back. If someone got scared and wanted to give up, they would put everyone else in danger. Harriet's rule was simple: we go on together, or we die together. Her strength gave others the courage to keep going, even when they felt they couldn't take another step. Harriet Tubman's bravery is almost impossible to fully grasp. The risks she took were enormous. There were huge rewards offered for her capture, and posters described her as a dangerous fugitive. Slave catchers with their hunting dogs were a constant threat, patrolling the roads and woods she traveled through. Yet, in all her years as a conductor on the Underground Railroad, she never lost a single passenger. Think about that. She successfully guided around 70 people, including her elderly parents, to freedom. Her knowledge of the secret paths, her clever tactics, and her unshakable faith made her a legend in her own time. Her work didn't stop with the Underground Railroad. When the Civil War began, Harriet used her skills and courage to help the Union Army. She worked as a nurse, caring for sick and wounded soldiers, but she also became a spy and a scout. She knew the land of the South so well that she could move through it without being seen. She gathered important information about where the enemy was, and even helped lead a military raid in South Carolina. This raid freed more than 700 enslaved people, making Harriet the first woman to lead an armed expedition in the war. She was a true warrior for freedom in every sense of the word. After the war, Harriet continued to fight for what was right. She settled in Auburn, New York, and spent the rest of her long life caring for others. She fought for women's suffrage, believing that women deserved the right to vote just as much as men. She also opened a home on her property for elderly and poor African Americans who had nowhere else to go. She never had much money, but she shared everything she had. Her life was a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and a deep commitment to helping other people. She never stopped working to make the world a better, more just place. Today, Harriet Tubman is remembered as one of the greatest heroes in American history. Her story inspires us because it shows that one person, even someone who starts with nothing, can change the world. She faced unimaginable cruelty and hardship, but she never let it break her spirit. Instead, she turned her pain into a powerful force for good. Her legacy is not just about the people she freed, but about the example she set. She teaches us that true courage is about standing up for others, and that the brightest light can often be found in the darkest of times. And that, my friends, is a story worth remembering forever.